I'm Richard Lautens. I'm a staff photojournalist at the Toronto Star, and I first walked into this place about 28 years ago. Throughout my career, I've been very, very fortunate that at somewhere like the Toronto Star, one day you're at a sporting event, and the next day you're at a political event, and then you're in the studio shooting fashion, and then you're on a plane and you're at spring training in Florida, or you're at a conflict zone in South America. So we get to do a little bit of everything. So from a photography standpoint, you really get to sort of exercise those creative muscles, let's say. It's just so great that you can take maybe a little bit of what you've learned shooting fashion in the studio and take that to a business portrait. Or perhaps you take something from a sporting event, how you shoot sports, maybe bring that to a political rally. And just this past year, I was very fortunate. I spent a little over 2 months with a colleague of mine. Her name is Katie Dobbs, and the two of us did a feature called Walking the Western Front. Being the 100th anniversary of the start of the First World War, we retraced all the battlefields and all the steps the Canadian soldiers took through France and Belgium. And kudos to the Canadians. They've kept the topography with all the shell craters and so on, which are now covered over with grass. And they allow the sheep to graze there. It makes this beautiful pastoral scene for what once was a living hell, I'm sure. As a photographer, you're always looking for something different. We were in an awful lot of cemeteries which were completely empty. And I love the regular tombstones of the Commonwealth graves here reflected in the guy's glasses. So you're doing two things. You're including the human element into a very sterile scene otherwise. And for me, that's something I'm always kind of looking for as a photojournalist, just a different way to tell that story. Here I am in the high Arctic. I'm up in a place called Igloolik, which is off the north coast of Baffin Island. It's about minus 43 degrees for about 10 days straight, I think. Here's a woman by the name of Mika Mike, who runs a dog team up there, wearing her caribou skin clothing and whatnot. Well, I was trying to do a story about where you're marrying traditional ways with modern technologies. But a more appropriate picture is something like this, where you've got, she's still getting her dog team together, but overhead you've got jets flying in. Somebody like Rihanna here, I would have liked to have done something a little bit wider with her, but frankly I was in her hotel room, and she's going to post the picture. She came out crying at one point because she was having kind of a wardrobe malfunction. She didn't like the way her top was sitting, and there's a problem, and she's all upset because it wasn't going to look very good. So to keep her at ease so I could get the picture that I wanted, I told her, okay, look, I'm going to get in very close, just a face shot. I'm going to blow out the background so you're not going to see any of it. And so right away she calmed right down. Now the difference, of course, when you're taking a picture of people who are in the news, here's a fellow who's got Alzheimer's disease. I leave a little bit of extra space on one side so that it's kind of like there's a little something missing from the picture. And I think it works quite well in this kind of setting, and it can be very different from a setting of a beautiful actress or something. Now just before I shot this picture, this is one of the most scared I've ever been in my career. We were down in a place called Cité Soleil in Port-au-Prince, and all of a sudden we were surrounded by 20 17-year-old guys with machetes and angry and agitated, just the reporter and I. So they sort of grabbed us and they hustled us into this little cinder block house. And we thought, oh man, this is it. We're dead. We're gone. It turns out this guy wanted to talk to the Western media and couldn't be seen in public because he's wanted by the death squads. So I always look at this picture and I remember how terrified I was, frankly, just before this, taking the picture. Again, people think photojournalism tends to be news photography, which are things like the G20 in Toronto. You know, the black bloc went by, watched them smash all kinds of windows. Part of that, I was at Queen's Park when the riot squad came in and started roasting the peaceful protesters. Why they didn't come in when the guys were breaking the windows, I'm not entirely sure, but I was in the middle of this. And this became a bit of a famous picture. It went all over the world. We replayed it endlessly in our newspaper. Later on, we tracked down this guy who's being kicked. We got his story. He was a total pacifist guy. It became interesting because the police officer who's doing the kicking, he's got no name tag on, which became a bit of an issue. So this became a bit of a perfect kind of image for what was going on that weekend. Nathan Cirillo, the soldier who was killed in Ottawa at the War Memorial, his funeral was in Hamilton. There's the pipes and drums and all the finery that all of our services can muster. But ultimately, to me, it comes down to this one little moment of this little boy, Cirillo's son, who's now fatherless. It all comes down to this one little moment. So that, to me, is realizing what's really important in a story. The best advice I can give anybody when it comes to photojournalism, really, is before you ever trip the shutter, ask yourself why. Why am I taking this photograph? What's the purpose of this photograph? Why am I shooting it from this angle? Why am I shooting it with this lens? What's that doing for me? And a lot of people, they don't really answer that question. They see something and it looks pretty, or it looks vaguely interesting, but it's got no real resonance. It's those photographs that really have that message behind it. Those are the ones that are really going to stick with people.